Alrighty, YouTube, Niner Empire, what is going down? Welcome back to another video. So I wanted to make a video on the undrafted free agent signings by the 49ers. They signed 6 undrafted free agents. First one was linebacker Stone Blanton out of Mississippi State. So obviously addressing, the linebacker depth. Obviously they took Nick Martin in the 3rd round. And when you look at the linebacker core outside of Fred Warner, you have Tatum Bethune, D. Winters, Nick Martin, and obviously now you got Stone Blanton. So, I like the signing. They need linebacker depth. They released Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles, before the start of free agency, and then, Dre Greenlaw ended up leaving the 49ers to sign with the Denver Broncos. And then the POS, Devondre Campbell, obviously he's not going to be back. He probably won't ever be back in the NFL after what transpired with him on the Niners. So they needed linebacker depth. Stone Blanton will give them that. And then they went and signed running back Corey Kiner out of Cincinnati. And I actually like this signing by the 49ers. Corey Kiner was definitely one of the running backs that was talked about a little bit going into the draft. I think this is a sneaky good addition by the 49ers. Obviously, they're trying to replace Jordan Mason. They drafted Oregon's running back Jordan James in round 5, in which he's smaller than Jordan Mason, but he runs with the same burst, violence, and determination. And Kiner is kind of built like James. Both are roughly about 5'9", 5'10", about 205 pounds. Both run a bit faster than the 4.6. And both are good fits in the 49ers zone blocking scheme. I do think Kiner's kind of got like this uncanny ability to avoid contact and break tackles. And he kind of runs with his center of gravity low, right? Like, he's got a terrific vision to kind of spot cutback lanes, and he's a decisive running back. One thing about Corey Kiner that I like, and I'm sure what the 49ers like, is you almost never see this guy get tackled by the first defender. He's typically always breaking 1 or 2 tackles every single run. So, he's not a flashy running back by any means, which is why he wasn't probably drafted, but he's the type of diamond in the rough that running backs coach Bobby Turner has found multiple times over his career. So, Corey Kiner, I like that. I really liked the Corey Kiner signing. I think the 49ers could find very good value with signing Corey Kiner as an undrafted free agent. And then they signed offensive lineman Drew Moss out of Colorado State. He's extremely similar in certain ways to the 49ers 7th round draft pick Connor Colby out of Iowa. In terms of their agility and length of their arms, they're very similar in that regard. They're extremely quick and agile for offensive linemen. They recorded a 4.58 20-yard shuttle at their pro days. Both have 32-inch arms, and that's very short for an offensive lineman, obviously, but when it's time to pass the ball, Moss and Colby, they're going to have to reach out in front of them and block somebody with much longer arms. So that's obviously not ideal. So I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that they're in a sense addressing the offensive lineman by signing an undrafted free agent, but I don't know, man. I do think these guys are built more like centers than guards. And maybe these guys could move to center, if they learn how to kind of snap the ball, because they're definitely built more like centers than they are guards. But either way, I mean, I don't know. The 49ers had to pick somebody. They had to pick somebody up as an undrafted free agent. And it seems to me that they always kind of pick the outside zone run blocker over the pass protector. That's just how the 49ers are. They definitely do not value offensive linemen like many other teams in the NFL. I mean, you look at Philly. The Eagles value big, long-armed offensive linemen, and that's just something that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch don't. So Drew Moss, they signed him out of Colorado State, and then they signed wide receiver Isaiah Nayer out of Nebraska, which I kind of like this signing too. Um, you know, I he only caught 87 passes in 5 seasons, which is probably why he went undrafted, but he caught 17 touchdown passes and averaged a whopping 18.3 yards per catch. So he's a big play type of guy. And this is a very big body type of receiver, and this is why I like the signing. He's 6'4", 218 pounds. He ran a 4.4 at the combine. And he's a good route runner. That's why, despite his meager production, in college, that's why he was invited to the NFL Combine. He does lack play strength. He's probably going to get out muscled for the ball in the air if he's not open, so he's definitely a project type of signing by the 49ers, but he could end up on the practice squad and develop and become a good depth piece for the 49ers. But this is the kind of talent that teams should want to develop, right? Like, instead of signing a player with low ceiling simply because he fits the scheme of your team, signing a guy with premium traits and kind of coaching him up is, in my opinion, kind of the way to do things. That's why Terrell Owens' son, the 49ers signed him, last year as an undrafted free agent. I like that they're taking a risk on somebody worth developing, because it could be the type of player that has a lot of success and could potentially be something in the NFL. He's got a lot of work to do, of course, but I do think of all the coaches in the NFL, Kyle Shanahan might have the best feel for scouting wide receivers. He always seems to find extremely talented wideouts who've kind of been overlooked. So I do like the Isaiah Nayer signing. I think there's some significant upside there. Will he ever be something in the NFL? I don't know. I mean, you can only hope that, but at the end of the day, again, he's a project type of signing, and you can't hate that the 49ers are signing a guy like him. And then following that, they signed BYU cornerback Jacob Robinson. I kind of like this signing too, man. I'm not going to lie. I think here's the thing. I mean, I know the Upton Stout draft pick to some was a reach. But I think if anybody knows how to scout good cornerbacks, it's Robert Saleh. And I'm going to take him, I'm going to take his knowledge on scouting cornerbacks over anybody else's in the NFL. Jacob Robinson's 5'9". He runs a 4.4. He started 4 seasons at BYU and was a captain as a senior. He had 11 interceptions. He's a decent tackler, which the 49ers are looking for. They need good tackling corners. Plus, he can play the outside and in the slot. And really athletically, this is a guy that's very similar to Diamondor Lenoir, who obviously was a 5th-round pick in 2021. But, obviously Lenoir currently is one of the top corners in the NFL. And obviously that's not saying that, Jacob Robinson's ever going to scratch the surface as Lenoir. But no one thought Lenoir would be good when the 49ers drafted him and when he was drafted. And, obviously he took a couple years to develop, but eventually became, one of the top corners in all of football. And again, Jacob Robinson's probably going to start his career out on the practice squad. But I do think this is a guy that has a very good opportunity and a real shot to make the 53-man roster. Obviously the only cornerbacks who definitely will make the team are Renardo Green and Diamondor Lenoir. And then obviously, the 49ers drafted Upton Stout in the 5th round. Darrell Luter Jr. was a 5th-round pick 2 years ago, and a few vets on cheap 1-year deals. kind of, imply that there's not going to be a lot of competition. Um, and I do like Upton Stout. I do. I think, this could be a very underrated pick for the 49ers, taking him in the 5th round. So, again, Jacob Robinson, depth type of signing, but I think his athleticism, knowing that he's a good tackler, he's going to compete, man. And I wouldn't be shocked if this guy's on the 53-man roster, when it's all said and done. So, following that, they signed Washington defensive lineman Sebastian Valdez. Sebastian Valdez, obviously, was a guy that I kind of, I heard his name multiple times throughout the draft and whatnot. Honestly, surprised he wasn't drafted, if we're being completely honest. He was obviously the 3rd defensive tackle that the 49ers added to their team this week. Obviously they drafted CJ West out of Indiana in round 4. And then one of my favorite draft picks this year, Alfred Collins, they also took in round 2. I think Alfred Collins is going to be a monster. So, Alfred Collins and CJ West, when you compare these guys to Sebastian Valdez, they weigh more, right? Like they each weigh more than 320 pounds. And Valdez is much more of a smaller defensive tackle weight-wise. He's 301 pounds, but he plays much bigger than his size. He's a run-stuffing specialist, kind of like Alfred Collins and C.J. West. And he anchors quite well against double-team blocks, which means he's, a great fit for the 49ers' wide 9 defensive front. He's extremely athletic. He's very powerful. He ran a 5.02 40-yard dash time and a 4.46 20-yard shuttle. Plus, he put up 34 reps on the bench at his pro day. So, you may ask, why did he go undrafted? Well, it might be because of his arms. He's only got a 31 quarter-inch arms, right? So that's not big. And there are very few NFL offensive linemen with arms that short, which might make it tough for Valdez to be a productive player. But, he's, I do think it's nice to have a human boulder like Sebastian Valdez as a backup if the starting run stuffers get injured. But obviously, the common theme in this draft has been run defense, run defense, run defense. And the 49ers clearly want to have a dominant run defense. And Valdez will likely give them depth at that position. So I definitely would be on the lookout for him, for the 49ers to kind of stash him on their practice squad and kind of utilize him as an insurance policy if, again, one of our starting run stuffers gets injured. So those were all 6 of the undrafted free agents that the 49ers signed. I know I didn't really touch on Stone Blanton too much, but, Stone Blanton, I don't know. I don't know if I'm not too, blown away by Stone Blanton. He doesn't have a lot of straight line speed to even really play outside linebacker for the 49ers, but he could be a backup for Fred Warner if he ends up making the 53-man roster. He probably will be a practice squad guy as well. But I don't know. He's got similar traits to Nick Martin and guys like that. He's obviously, he would be a good, run stuffing linebacker, but there's not a lot else that really, wows me about Stone Blanton, like some of the other undrafted free agents that the Niners signed. So let me know what you guys think of all these undrafted free agents that they signed. Let me know who you guys like the most, which signing you guys like the most out of all the undrafted free agents. And yeah, man, as always, go Niners. I'll see you guys in the next one.